We often get phone calls from what I like to refer to as cranky pants people, or worse still, the ones that have gone beyond the cranky stage and now super emotional. They're verging on tears because they cannot understand for the life of them why on earth council would support a unit development next door to them. In those situations, my first question is, well, do you know what zoning your property is? Or do you know what zoning the neighbour's property is? In those moments, I get a, you know the saying, deer in the headlights? It's kind of like the audio version of that. You can just see their minds jumping from zoning, what's zoning? To just play it cool, I'll pretend I know what zoning means, to abort, I have no idea what she's talking about. You can just see their mind is jumping from one scenario to another. In those situations or those moments, I want to reach through the phone and shake them and say, how on earth can you not know what zoning your property is? The problem is, even though this information is freely and readily available, council makes it really easy to access, people simply don't know it exists. And those few that do know it exists do not know how to interpret this information. So in today's video, we're going to try and burst that ignorance bubble. We're going to try and tell you or educate you or share with you, that's probably a better way of saying, share with you how to work out what a zoning is for a certain property and what the rules, the intent, the regulations are under the planning scheme for each one of those zones, so that you can make more informed decisions going forward. So you can decide whether you want to buy in an area that's going to have those developments in the future. And if you already live in those areas, whether you want to pump a bucket load of money, let's say, into a dream renovation when those uses are going to pop up around you. Are you better off selling to a developer and buying a site that is more appropriate for your use? Well, if that sounds like it's something that interests you, stick around. Okay, so there are approximately 27 different zones within Brisbane. However, for the purpose of this video, we're going to just focus on the 6 most common residential ones. You don't need to worry about the rest of them. So, what's a zone? Let's start with the basics. I like to think of a zone kind of like a category. So essentially, council has gone across all of Brisbane and categorised every single site into a different zone. And there are certain rules and requirements for each one of those zones. Rules and requirements which are spelt out nice and clearly within City Plan 2014, which is essentially our planning scheme or our rule book that we operate under. So what are those rules? Well, let's get to this little table over here. So the 6 zones I mentioned before, we got CR1, Character Residential 1, LDR, Low Density Residential, CR2, Character Residential 2, LMR1, LMR2 and LMR3, which is Low to Medium Density Residential 1, 2 and 3. Now, let's start firstly with the uses. What's the intended use for that zone? Well, firstly, Character Residential 1. I like to say that is houses. More specifically, pre-1947 houses. So they're more the inner city areas where council wants to preserve the original pre-1947 housing stock, and they kind of don't want to see units and more modern houses creeping in. Low density residential. That is exactly the same as Character Residential, except without the traditional pre-1947 houses. Obviously, you're not going to have perfect boundaries between these areas. You will have some pre-1947 houses creeping into low-density residential, vice versa. But generally speaking, the intent is Character Residential 1 is to preserve pre-1947 houses in a housey sort of area. I'm going to get really technical with my language here today. CR2. Okay, so in those areas, we want houses plus units. So technically, you can start to see some units, townhouses and duplexes creeping into these CR2 zones. To date, we haven't actually seen a lot of these proposals go ahead. At this stage, the land is more valuable as a house block rather than actually as a townhouse or unit block. So we find the developers are steering clear of those properties there because they just don't stack up financially. However, you give it maybe, let's say 5 years, the tipping point may happen. So we may suddenly find that they are financially feasible and more people, or more developers, I should say, are buying up in those zones to actually do unit townhouse developments, all of that sort of stuff. That's when you'll start to see the mix of houses and units. Now, LMR 1, 2 and 3, quite simply, well, technically it's still like CR2, a mix of houses and units, but you're going to see more units in those 3 zones there than you are in these ones up here. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is minimum lot sizes for subdivisions. So bear with me a sec, I'll quickly write these figures down. Okay, so in the CR1 zone, council likes to see a minimum lot size of 450 square metres. Now, we can't account for the past, you've got to ignore the past, but going forward, these are the rules that council wants to see adhered to. So minimum lot size, 450 square metres. That essentially means you need a minimum land size of 900 square meters. Let me get my maths right. It'd be kind of embarrassing if I screwed that up. So yes, 450 plus 450 equals 900. Oh, up there for thinking, hey? So yes, you need a minimum of 900 square meters within the CR1 zone before you can look at a 1 into 2 lot subdivision, creating 2 front lots. When it comes to low density residential zone, you need either 300 or 400 square meters. I'd probably suggest 95% of the time you need 400 square meters. That extra 5% of the time is where you're located within close proximity to a, let's call it a medium or large centre. Now there are specific rules there. It's 200, 400. Oh, I'm going a mental blank. Oh, this is awkward. Anyway, let's just skip past that little stuff up. It's within short walking distance of a centre that is over 2,000 square metres in area. The situations where you find those blocks are very, very rare, few and far between. That's what I'm trying to say. So more often than not, like I said, 95% of the time, 400 square metres is what you need. So 400 plus 400 equals 800. If you want to do 1 into 2 lot subdivision, you need 800 square metres to create those 2 front lots. Now, disclaimer, need to put it out there to say there are additional requirements in terms of lot widths, servicing requirements, all these extra things that you need to consider before you can look at development on a property. But at a super high level, just looking purely at lot sizes, that's what you need. Now, CR2, you can actually go down to 300 square metres. So again, 300 plus 300, 600. We're starting to see those smaller lot sizes creeping in. LMR, this is when we see us drop right down. So LMR 2 and 3, you can go to 260 square metre front lots. LMR 1, you can go to 180 square metre blocks. Now, it is very rare to actually see 180 square metre lots in LMR 1 because those properties tend to be more valuable as unit sites. So you can get more yield out of them and therefore more money by developing them for unit sites. So yes, we haven't actually seen many of those 180 square metre ones creeping in since City Plan 2014 was introduced, I guess you'd say. But technically, they can be done. Now, let's jump to rear lots. Give me a sec to write down all these figures. Okay, so there we go. Don't you love magic in fast forward in time? So before we were talking about front lots, so if you want 2 lots side by side, if you want to have a front lot and a rear lot, then you need to combine. For example, in the CR1, you need 600 square metres for the rear lot, excluding access way, plus 450 square metres for the front lot. So you need a total land area of 1,050 square metres or more if you want to do a front and rear lot subdivision. I'll let you guys read the rest. It's pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, when you start to get down here, they're all 350s. They start to get, I was going to say larger. It's all relative, hey? I mean, 350 square metres, not that large. But hey, in the scheme of things, kind of is. Okay, now let's jump to unit requirements or the unit lot size, let's say. So we established over here in the beginning, CR1 and LDR are not intended to accommodate units going forward. Like I said, we can't account for previous planning schemes, previous rules, requirements, all that sort of stuff, what was done back in the day. But going forward, council does not want to see, let me get my pen working, does not want to see units, townhouses or duplexes within those 2 zones. Now, like I said before, CR2, they do want to allow you to do units, duplexes, townhouses, all those things in those areas around the pre-1947 houses. At the moment, financially, they don't stack up. And the reason they don't stack up is you need a minimum of 800 square metres of land and you're limited to, is that the best way to describe it? You're basically capped at a maximum yield of 1 dwelling per 300 square metres. So if you want to get 3 dwellings on the property, you need 900 square metres of land before you can do any sort of unit developments. Again, I restate, that's the reason why we haven't seen those areas being developed yet for townhouses, duplexes and units, but in the future, that could well change. Now we come to these LMR ones. In those zones, you only need 600 square metres to be able to do units or townhouses or duplexes, same as far as we're concerned, basically additional dwellings on the block. Now, there was a point I was going to make there. Oh, that's what I was going to say. People often ask what yield or what ratio or how many dwellings can we put on when we're looking at units in those areas. Council doesn't actually specify a unit limitation. So they don't sit there and go, oh, well, for a block of that size, you can do 5 units. What they do is they limit the footprint. So they basically say you can't, or you're limited to 45% site cover, or you must be 2 metres off the side boundary, you must be 6 metres off the rear boundary, all of that sort of stuff. Those limitations then naturally create a limitation? What am I trying to say here? They naturally restrict the number of dwellings that you can get on the property. In addition to the building envelope requirements, there's also car parking requirements. By the time you account for a physical car space and the manoeuvring associated with that car space, it often, like I said before, limits the number of dwellings you can get on a property naturally as a result. So I think that covers all the rules. What you can clearly see here now is CR1 is housey, big lots. LDR is housey, medium to big lots. Like I said, CR1's more character, pre-1947, cutesy little houses. Low density residential is more those outer lying areas, more like Stafford, the Gap, those sort of areas. CR2 is starting to get more inner city, where council's like, well, we've got to create a bridge or a transition, I guess you'd say, between the cute big house lots and the unit lots. So let's see a bit of both merged into one there. That's actually a good way to describe it. It's the child of, well, that's a bit weird way to describe it, but it's the child of CR1 and LMR 1, 2 or 3 essentially. So that's where you start to see the mix of houses and units on the slightly larger block sizes with the yield yield limitations. But then you get to LMR 1, 2 and 3, and that's where you start to see the units and the smaller lot sizes. Keeping in mind, like I said, yes, technically you can start to see these lot sizes, but if anyone has a 600 plus square metre block, you're tending to see them wanting to go down the unit path because you can get more yield, more dwellings on the property than you can just from a vacant subdivision. Okay, so now that you understand what the rules are, what the intent is for each one of these 6 different zones, your next question naturally is, well, how do I find out what zone applies to a property? Well, what we're going to do is we recorded a video last year, I think it was probably the middle of last year. Honestly, I can't remember. Time flies when you're having fun. But yes, we recorded a video that basically introduced you to Brisbane City Council's interactive mapping program. So I'll include a link to that video below. If you click on that, what you need to do is either look up the property report for the property report for the property, poor choice of words. You get what I'm trying to say. Or you need to turn on the zoning layer. So you basically go in, search your property, either go to the report or turn on the layer. I would strongly recommend that you not only look at the zoning for your property or the property you're looking to purchase, but also the surrounding properties. Because there's no point you being in a cute sort of residential housey area and thinking, oh, I'm sweet, but then finding out 2 doors down is LMR 1 or 2. You kind of want to know what's going to be happening in your street. So yes, go in there, check it out. You can quite easily, and I really want to make a point of this, it is super easy to access this information. You want to go in, work out what zoning applies to the property you either own or you're looking to buy, look at the wider area, and then come back to these rules, and that will give you an idea of what council intends or envisages in that area in the future. Now, I did make a point earlier to say that this is just the high level stuff. Each site, just because it ticks the lot size requirements, doesn't mean it automatically can be developed. There's things like servicing, width requirements, protected vegetation, heritage stuff, flooding stuff. You get the idea, I can go on and on. All of those things can kill the development potential of a site at any one point in time. There's literally hundreds of different things that could trigger an issue. But at a high level, it gives you an idea of what could happen next door. So if you're sitting on a property and you go, okay, well, we're in the LMR2 zone, which is probably one of the more common zones, and we've got a 600 square metre block right next door to us, your mind needs to go, okay, well, at any point in the future, that property could be developed for units. Now, if you do look next door and you have, let's say, a 400 square metre property, don't automatically go, no more units around me, I'm sweet. Because technically, it is very uncommon, but technically someone could buy 2 properties together and combine them into the one application. So if you had 2 400 square metre blocks side by side, they could create an 800 square metre site. That 800 square metre site then ticks the box for units. So we've covered, let me just check my cheat sheet. We've done, yes, I have to admit I've got a cheat sheet today. There's a lot of information going on here, okay? We've covered what is zoning, it's like categories. We've covered the rules, we've covered the intent, how to find the information, what to do. Oh yes, so you basically zoom out, look at the wider area. Okay, got to make a point here, guys. If you go in and if you work out that you're in one of these unit areas and you thought you were in one of these housey areas, don't go getting your cranky pants on. Don't go getting cranky at council or at us or at anyone. The reality is this information has been publicly available for as long as I've been a town planner. I've been a town planner for over 15 years, okay? So you can't sit there and get cranky at council or anyone else for the fact that you didn't know it. Yes, the purpose of this video, I'm highlighting the fact that people don't know this information. I want to get it out there. I'm acknowledging that people don't understand this stuff, but you can't turn around and blame council because they've done everything in their power to put the information out there for you guys. So just keep that in mind. Now, past. I've touched on this a couple of times. In the past, the rules and requirements are very different. So every, let's say, 10 to 15 years, we get a new planning scheme. Every time a new planning scheme comes in, they do change these rules and requirements slightly, sometimes more so than other times. And as time goes on, depending on the political climate, they can get a little bit more loose or tightened in terms of their enforcement of these rules and requirements. As a result of the public consultation process that was carried out beginning of last year and the findings which were released in June last year, I believe it was, referred to as Blueprint, council has now made it very clear that they are going to, in response to public backlash, crack down on the enforcement of these rules and requirements. So you can, in the past, hey, yes, it might have been a lot more relaxed and they may not have enforced these rules quite as strictly as they are now, but going forward, I think you can safely bet that they're going to stick to these more often than not. If they are going to break them slightly through a performance outcome, which is fully legitimate, then you're going to see slight relaxation. So it might be a 599 square metre block instead of 600 square metre block, but you're not going to see a 200 square metre block being developed for units. It's just not going to happen. Okay, so again, just checking my cheat sheet. I think that covers everything I want to talk about. Oh, okay. So like I said, I will include the video link below to the interactive mapping. Check that out, go through it. If you want to learn more, then why not check out some words out. Oh, I was so close to finishing the video without screwing up. Anyway, if you want to know more about town planning, what I was going to say is why not go through and check out our previous videos. We've been recording these videos for over a year now, so there is a bucket load of weekly videos for you guys to catch up on. Until next time, thanks for watching.
For all you red tape lovers out there, I have one thing to say. Well, no, actually, I've got three. Number one, the advice provided in these videos is general in nature. It's not site specific. You would be a silly billy to go and make financial decisions based on this advice without first checking with the town planner. Don't be a silly billy. Number two, Brisbane town planning is in no way linked to Brisbane City Council. The views expressed in these videos are my own, not council's. So if you don't like them, blame me, not council. Number three, what was my number three? Oh yeah, the views expressed in these videos are accurate at the time of recording. If you're watching this video back 10 years from now, the views may not be so accurate. That's all. Bye.